Hello and welcome to Matcha Mornings, part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network. I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith, and I'm excited to dive deep on topics around holistic health, the power of food, hormone health, how the practices of yoga can impact our health and well-being, and much more. So grab your cup of tea, settle in, and let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Matcha Mornings podcast. I am so excited that you've decided to join me for today's episode of the show. And today on the podcast, I am very excited to be joined by one of my dear, dear friends, Rachelle Shelton. Rachelle and I have known each other for almost 6 years now, and we actually met while we were working together at Lululemon. And over the last 6 years, Rachelle and I have connected on a number of different things, from both being yoga teachers and loving yoga to loving the outdoors and doing many, many hikes together, to also having many discussions around food and nutrition, health and wellness, cooking, making delicious meals together. And so when I decided to start Matcha Mornings, I immediately thought of Rachelle as somebody who would be a really great fit for the podcast. And so on today's episode of the podcast, Rachelle and I are going to talk about her journey with health and wellness and how the journey towards being more fit and eating a little bit better became obsessive, and how she dove down a path that wasn't necessarily so healthy anymore, and how she was able to shift away from the unhealthy patterns that she had created in her life and be able to learn to love herself at any size and eating any type of diet, I guess you could say. So on this episode, we are going to cover things like diets, nutrition, body image, and much more. So I hope that you enjoy this episode of the show. And without further ado, here is Rachelle. Rachelle, welcome to the podcast today. I'm super excited to have you here with me.
Thanks, Amanda. Happy to be here.
It's so funny because you and I have been super good friends for like 6 years now, and we've had so many conversations, on the phone, in person, our days working at Lululemon together. And it's fun to officially be, recording something that other people get to hear of our conversations around, food, yoga, body image, all that sort of stuff. But before we dive into that, I just wanted you to introduce yourself a little bit. Just tell listeners a little bit about who you are and where you're joining us from.
Well, my name's Rachelle Shelton. I am calling today from Whitby, Ontario. So for those who aren't familiar with Ontario, Canada, I am like 45 minutes, maybe less than that, east of Toronto. So part of the greater Toronto area. Now I'm a yoga teacher. I've been teaching yoga for a couple of years now. It is a growing, it's my business. My brand is Choose Freedom Yoga. There's a lot behind that in terms of what freedom means. And I really started my yoga career after I moved here. So that was a new location. So didn't know anybody, didn't know any studios. So the last year and a half, I've just been trying to make my a presence here to kind of find my tribe and my my people who wants to take my style of yoga. And yeah, I've been like an athlete on and off my whole life. I've always loved exercise, and I've gone through a lot of ups and downs and periods of different philosophies of eating as well, which has impacted my views on health and yoga and wellness and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that you have, this big history of being an athlete and having this background in health and wellness. But where did that kind of all start? Where did your journey with health begin?
For as long as I can remember, my parents put me in sports like most kids. I wasn't a star athlete, but I guess I should say I was athletic. Really funny, the first thing I remember being put in was soccer, and I hated soccer with a passion.
Me too.
I literally only went for the snacks, and because I was made to. The first sport I really enjoyed was basketball, and then I played rugby when I was younger. The first individual athletic thing that I did that I really enjoyed that made me feel like, okay, now I'm worrying about my health is that I started running for the first time, I think, probably around when rugby started, because I had to do running drills for rugby. And then I started going for runs, and I was probably 15 years old. And then I was that was probably one of the first times I ever was hey, I'm going to diet. What's good for me? What's not good for me? Oh, hey, if I run in cut out bread, for example, I feel thinner kind of thing. And that's where kind of like that experimentation started.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy. I feel like a very similar age for me where that started also, but thinking about that now as, being in our early 30s, it seems so crazy to think about girls that young having those types of thoughts around like, oh, maybe I shouldn't eat bread because I need to look a certain way. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it should be the last thing you're worrying about when you're 15, but I thought about it a lot. Like, how do I look? How is this going to fit? Will that look good on me? Oh, like if I do this, will I lose weight? Like, yeah, it's probably even younger than that, but that was like the first time I remember kind of taking it seriously. Like I kind of knew that junk food and stuff like that wasn't good for me before, but then I remember around that age feeling like I had to try at it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that also. And then how did that kind of evolve? Like how did your journey with like health and wellness or healthy eating or dieting, I guess you could say, which we'll talk about dieting not really being necessarily healthy, but how did that kind of evolve as you became an adult, went to university and all that sort of stuff?
So to put it in more simple terms, I've always loved to eat and I've always loved food. It's always like I now know it's been more of like an emotional crutch for me. Um, like emotional eating's like pretty common. I think it's more common than people realize. And I've always like known I've had a big appetite and stuff. It's like my parents would feed me well. Like they would feed me like, the standard North American diet at least 20 years ago or, meat, potatoes and vegetables. And we'd have stir fries. But then, anytime I was given access to anything like that or that wasn't so healthy, like for example, cookies or chips and pop, I would consume a lot of it. And I was fortunate in my younger years. It didn't really affect me weight wise. Like it's still not good for you if you put on weight or not when you eat like that. But it didn't affect me. And then, around that age, 15, 16, I was like starting to be a bit more conscious of it, but I would still overconsume like sugar and chocolate a lot. One, because I really enjoyed it. Two, it's addictive. And three is because it's how I dealt with stress. And then around university, I want to say maybe like third year university, I think is when the first time I was like, oh, wow, like, or maybe even second year, like I was putting on a pretty substantial amount of weight where like my size of my clothes started changing and I would see myself in photos and be like, oh, wow. I didn't realize I looked like that. And so I was pretty young in my 20s when I realized how quickly my weight would fluctuate. So I was like, okay, I can't just do whatever I eat whatever I want and work out, which is like, I feel like that's how like a lot of young people start into fitness. They want to work out and go to the gym, but then they'll go buy Wendy's. And I was like, okay, I can't do that anymore. And it wasn't until like, I'll skip ahead to about 25. I went from being like a medium size to like a large or extra large size within a couple of years with my eating habits. And at 25, after I had done an international internship, in Africa for 4 months. And again, that was very stressful and I put weight on when I was in Africa. I came home, nothing fit. I didn't have a job. I had no idea what I was going to do. I had a bunch of people asking me, what are you going to do next? And literally at that moment, the only thing in my life that I felt like I had control over was what I was eating. And for whatever reason, at that time in September of that year, I was just like, okay, I'm going to start eating healthy. And I started slowly cutting out things and being very concerned about portions and things like that. So that's when I got like serious.
Okay. Yeah. And that was right around the time that you moved to Banff, right?
Yes. So that was September, would have been 2013. And then I left for Banff in October.
Okay. And then once you got to Banff, I feel like that's kind of where our journeys crossed is at that point. So I met you where you were lifting weights all the time. You were super, I guess, like controlled with your portions. Like I remember being like, wow, this girl has like such good, like, what's the word? Like restriction or such good control over like restraint. Yeah. Like such good restraint over how many almonds she eats. Like I was like, I don't even know. Like, just like shove a handful in my mouth, like that type of thing. And it's interesting because we'll talk a little bit more about what that journey looked like, but it's interesting to think about how that was my perspective of you. Like I was like, wow, she's so like determined and she's got such good like control and restraint with food and, you know, working out and all that sort of stuff. And I'd be curious to know like what was going on for you at that point. Like, you know, when I look at that and see that, what was happening with you?
Well, when I started cutting things out and then slowly started to lose weight and things started to fit me again, like it was the best feeling in the world. Like I probably was just feeling better overall because I was putting less garbage in me. But like, you know, in terms of a society, we put so much pride attached to I've lost weight, so this is a good thing and now I'm happy, right? So, and it just felt good, and I made the decision to go to Banff, and it kind of just kept snowballing. Like it just like I just kept losing more and more weight. And a big thing, which I talk about now that I've left Banff and I drive so much, my body's changed so much. So anyways, I moved to Banff. I didn't have a car, and like, you know, I wasn't eating chips. I wasn't eating chocolate and cookies. I wasn't eating bread. And I still like, stopped drinking milk. Like I cut out dairy, and I was walking everywhere, and I was literally just shedding weight. And, you know, and then people start to praise you. And I was just like, wow, for the first time in my adult life, I've figured this out. Like I was trying, but I didn't feel like it was that hard because I didn't really have great portion control to begin with. That came when cleaning up my diets kind of slowly turned into more of an obsession. And I felt really good. I was really proud of myself. It brought a newfound confidence that I never had. And I was just like, oh, wow, why did I wait so long to do this? Like, why did I wait so long? Like, I know, like, everyone's complimenting me. I feel great. I'm fitting into clothes I haven't worn in years. Like, why did I do this sooner? I guess at first it was quite positive for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I think is really like complex kind of about, you know, this topic, because you know, when you just put that on the surface level, like there's a lot of great things about cutting pop out of your diet and not eating chips all the time and, you know, not eating junk food and exercising more. Like that's really great for your physical and mental health. And I feel like, I guess if it stays there, maybe it can continue to be healthy. But I think one of the things that is a little bit challenging, especially in society, is that we put this like, I guess like this idea that, you know, you look good when you are a certain size. And I feel like that's something that's like really troubling for me when people are, because I've experienced the same thing, like losing weight and people are like, wow, you look so great. And they're looking you up and down. And like, that feels good. Of course, everyone wants to be told they look great. But it's interesting that people often only say it when you've changed in terms of like your body becoming smaller.
Right. And the one thing it makes me think about when you just said that is then fast forward a few years later when I started to put weight back on, you notice when people stop telling you how great you are, and it sucks. Like how great you look, sorry. You notice when it stops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we get to that part of your journey, I know that there's like a couple more years in between. So can you talk about like the period of time when you were, I remember when I met you, I think you were vegan, and then you started marathon training. And I remember just like one day you were like unfolding clothes at Lululemon, and I was like, man, like you have no butt anymore. Like you were so skinny and like your pants were just hanging off of you. And I think that's probably like, at least when I knew you, like the smallest you ever got. And I remember being like,
yeah, that was
a little concerned for you.
So I just wanted to say one other thing about what you said about, you know, like you cut out pop and, you know, maybe a lot of sugar, and that's good for you in a lot of rounds, but kind of like the result of that is looking good. So, you know, cutting out those things aren't necessarily bad. It's the intention, I think. So if you know that like sugar gives you mood swings, or like you don't sleep well. And like, you know, when I've had too much sugar, I get big bags under my eyes and I feel like a basket case. So you're like, oh, I shouldn't eat sugar. This isn't good for me. It's different than if I stop drinking pop, eating dairy and eating bread, I'm going to lose weight and therefore I'll be happier. So like I think that's for me, that's the difference. So I moved to Banff. I started working at the Rimrock, as you know, first, which doesn't matter in terms of this conversation, other than They had a gym there, and that's when, and I got to work out there for free, which was supposed to be a secret at the time. Like, don't tell anybody else that works at the hotel that spa members or spa staff gets to work out for free. And I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family there. And so I kind of just kept snowballing on this fitness. I had a background, but I never really weightlifted before. And so again, I started like getting smaller, getting leaner, and I started working at Lululemon. And I had never been in that kind of environment before. And as you know from working there, like, there's such an encouragement to be so active. So I was strongly encouraged to go to the gym a lot. I was strongly, not that this was bad or wrong, or I was encouraged to go to yoga. And I was introduced to, Erin Evans, who I ended up doing my teacher training with, and really falling in love with yoga. And I was working on my feet 8 hours or more a day, and I was walking most places. So some of that weight loss was intentional, but a lot of it was also lifestyle. And again, not to, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear or not, but not to shit on Lululemon. But also when I started working there, and my body was changing so much. When I first got hired, I was wearing, like, just to give perspective, like a size 8 to 10. I'd been like a 12, and then I was like 8 to 10. And then, I would lose weight, and again, getting praise there. And there was so much focus on size there, I felt like. And I don't think that helped. I don't think that's a Lulu cultural thing. I think it's just like a bunch of young women who might be self-conscious or concerned about their bodies talk about it. There was a lot of talk about what size do you wear? What size is that? Oh, you should size up. You should size down. And I think that really impacted it as well. So the first summer I met you, I was like eating paleo, having a very built-in active lifestyle as well as being active. And I was training for my first half marathon that summer, the summer I met you, I think. And then the marathon training snowballed because our friend, Care, she came out of the lunchroom one day and was like, "Hey, Rach, I signed up for the Banff full marathon. You're going to do it with me," or something along those lines. And I would be like shitting myself. Again, sorry, I'm swearing. And I was like, "Oh God, that's a lot more than a half marathon." And I was just
double.
like, yeah. And I was like, "Okay, yeah. So you signed up. So I guess we're doing this together." And then once I started the challenge, I loved it. And I loved to have that conversation. It was kind of something else to like brag about when they'd be like, "Oh, wow, you're so skinny. You look so good." Like, "Well, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm marathon training." And even though I enjoyed the challenge of it, even though I never really enjoyed it, like it was very challenging mentally and physically, which again, some people would argue is a good thing. And the veganism came in because when I started half marathon training, I was like eating this very, what I would call paleo or similar to it, like a lot of eggs, a lot of fruit and vegetables, and a lot of meat. And I was getting cramps in my stomach, and are like going to the doctor being like, "What's wrong? I can't run. I'm training for this half marathon." And I stopped eating eggs in the morning, and then running got better. And then I was like, kind of just got really I keep using the word addicted, but I guess maybe I was just really curious about cutting food out of my diet. And so I was like, what would happen if I cut out meat? Because I'd heard about veganism at this point. And so I started cutting out meat. So as you can imagine, what I was eating was quite restrictive, like a lot of peanut butter. Anyone that knows me knows that. But like a lot of fruit, vegetables. I was eating legumes, but I wouldn't eat rice. I wouldn't eat potatoes. I wouldn't eat bread to start. And I was running that much. And so I lost even more weight. And I think that's when people, in terms of the concerned line, started making a few comments to me. You're not the first person that I work with at Lululemon was like, "Yeah, we weren't sure if we need to like step in and say something or do something." Because I dropped a lot of weight again. And again, in terms of doing things for the right reason, I never took up veganism because I was like, it's good for the planet. We shouldn't be torturing animals. It's inhumane, any of those things. I was like, sweet, I stopped eating eggs and meat and I got even skinnier. And now I'm getting even more praise for how fit I am. That's why I kept it up. I started with, how long can I keep this up? And the marathon training is probably almost to be like the beginning of when things started to change in the opposite direction because I had to include carbs back in. I just got to a point in my training where I was like, I can't I don't know like why I got to that point, but I was like, okay, I'm running so much. I have to be giving myself more fuel. But yeah, that's how I got to the marathon training point, of when you referencing that day of me
Yeah.
unfolding clothes.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, it was you and Melloc, and I was like putting some stuff away, and I just remember being like, man, like you are so tiny. And I think I've 100% been guilty of like wow, you look so great. Like I'm sure I
Yeah.
probably said that to you many times during the time that we worked together. And I mean, I think one of the things that's interesting about your story is like when I met you and I think you were transitioning into veganism maybe, or paleo. I just remember you being like, I eat steak on my birthday. It's like a distinct thing. I remember I have a steak on my birthday.
Yeah, because it was a diet. It was a
Yeah.
diet at first. So I got almost completely vegan for a month before my half marathon. And then and then I kept it up. So the day of the half marathon, I had a burger. I may even had a bun that day. I think I went a little crazy. I might have had the hamburger with a bun. And then I ate vegan until my birthday. And I had steak on my birthday. So then from that point, it was like, okay, I eat vegan. Like I have a vegan diet because that's what it was. It wasn't a lifestyle for me. But I'm going to have steak on my birthday and I'm going to have turkey on Thanksgiving and Christmas. I remember those were my rules at the time. Yeah. So again, like, yeah, it wasn't like I love animals. This is the right thing to do. It was like I started eating this way and I was already thin and I got even thinner. And I just kept pushing it to see how thin I could get.
Right.
And that's where like the counting of the almonds came up and things like that. I don't want to say this about her negatively, but someone you and I both know, it was someone that I work with at Lululemon that told me I should count my almonds.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. Actually, yeah, I'm remembering now that when I was saying that I remember being like, oh, you do have a lot of restraint, but I do remember that I was like, man, you like can also put down a lot of food, which is something I respect. And then I remember that point where you're like, okay, I can only have like so many almonds, which meant one of the
Right.
things we bonded over. I remember you came over to me one day on the floor at Lululemon and you opened up your secret pocket in your pants and you had almonds stashed in there. And I was like, yes, we're going to be best friends.
Yeah.
And then we couldn't share almonds once you restricted your almonds after that.
Right. Oh no, I never thought about it that way. Yeah.
Portion
So like,
control.
even though I restricted so much, I still ate a lot. Like again, people would say, "Oh, you look so great," blah blah blah. But then they would see me eat, and they're like, "Whoa, how do you eat so much?" I was just eating very clean, and I used to boast about that. Right? I was like, "Oh, well, like you can be thin and eat as much as you want if you're eating the right foods." And again, having a lot of that built-in active lifestyle when you're on your feet hours and hours and hours a day obviously helped. But I got to a tipping point. I think it was even before the marathon happened where I felt like I was starting to put weight on. And I remember I got to a point during my marathon training where I had to stop weighing myself. It was probably partly the stress I was putting myself under because I never really wanted to do it. I remember I almost quit doing the marathon before it happened, but then I was encouraged not to do it. And, try, do your best. Oh, you've been training so hard. But so I started eating more. So obviously I put weight on. And so I had to stop weighing myself. So that particular common friend that we work with at Lulu, I was like, oh, what? I think I said to her, like, I don't know why I'm putting weight on. She's like, well, you eat well, Rachel, but you do eat a lot. Like, you shouldn't be eating more than 14 almonds at a time. And that's when the counting of the almonds started. But I would still hide food at Lululemon all the time. I had food in the pants drawer, like trail mix, almonds, or dates. Like that was one of my big fake phases when I was like, I'm vegan. I'm just going to eat dates. But yeah, so that's when like the portion control more part came into it, is when I was like terrified of putting weight on.
Right. Right. And that's like, it's kind of interesting to like just hear the journey with that, because, it sounds like when you first started, there was like, a lot of healthy aspects behind it. Like and I remember like you looked strong and healthy and you ate really clean. And then it's just interesting how it's so easy, especially with the influence of other people, like talking about sizes, getting kind of addicted to these compliments, getting addicted to losing weight, because that's like a real thing that happens. And then kind of like spiraling down to the point where you're like in fear of putting weight on, which is, I think, when, health becomes unhealthy.
Right. So then after when I hurt myself running and I had to extremely alter my lifestyle. And I'll backtrack a little bit. So I always would, like, even in a regular day, people thought I would eat a lot, but I would still emotionally binge a lot. But then I would just counter it by, I'm run training. Like, I would binge and then run a half marathon. And then I'd just be like, I carb loaded. I was always able to out exercise my anxiety or my shame about eating certain things or my shame about eating too much. Like, if I didn't start a shift at Lululemon until 3, I would get up, walk 20 minutes, a 40-minute walk, which is a just decent amount of walking. I'd walk to and from the gym. I'd work out for an hour and a half, and then I would go to a noon yoga class, and then I would walk back home, get ready for work, and walk back in the town and work an 8-hour shift, and then walk back where I lived on Porcupine, which was like a 20-minute walk from town. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I was exercising so much, it masked all that emotional eating and overeating for so long until I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about kind of what happened after you ran your marathon and then what that kind of transition was like when you had to kind of shift your lifestyle?
So like a week or 2 weeks before the marathon, my foot started hurting. What's so crazy even to say now? I don't remember what foot it was. I actually don't know if it was my left or right foot. I want to say it was my right foot. No, it's my left foot. Sorry, because I have a bad right knee. Bad left foot. It was a bad left foot and a bad right knee. Started hurting. And I kind of just shook it off. And someone's like, maybe you should be wearing better shoes. And again, common friend Adrienne, her Olympian sister, like she had extra pairs of running shoes because her sister was sponsored by Nike. Side story there. But like, so she gave me a new pair of shoes, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I want to do this. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go do it and see how far I get. And like 26 kilometers in, my foot started hurting. And another side story is like my longest training run was supposed to be 30 kilometers and I didn't finish it. I totally psyched myself out that day. And so before that, I've only ever really run like a little bit over a half marathon or maybe 25 kilometers, I guess. And so I'd never run that long to know that my body can't handle it. 26 kilometers, 27 kilometers. And when I got to like 28, 29 kilometers, my foot was throbbing and I didn't think too much of it. Internally, I didn't feel very good too. I felt like really sick and my stomach felt awful. So it took me a lot longer than I thought it was going to, but I did finish. And again, I didn't think too much into my foot hurting till afterwards. So that ended up being like a really long process. I had really bad plantar fasciitis, which anyone that's ever run probably knows what that is. The fascia on my foot was damaged and it makes your foot hurt a lot. And it's really hard to heal because it's hard to stay off your feet. And so I was told to stay off my feet as much as I could. I couldn't run. I couldn't bike. I couldn't bike uphill. I was told not to put a lot of weight on my feet. So like I wasn't doing like any like leg stuff at the gym or anything. So even though I was eating almost a completely vegan diet at that time, I guess I did eat a lot of fruit. I ate a lot of vegetables. I also ate a lot of peanut butter, and I had introduced some carbs back into my diet, like potatoes and rice, and it's even like avocados. Like all those things are bad for you, but they are calorie dense. And it didn't take very much time at all after I couldn't out exercise my anxiety anymore that I quickly started putting on some weight. Like it's not like I completely ballooned, but like, the super tight clothes I bought when I was really small quickly stopped fitting. And it was crushing. Like it was absolutely crushing. Like no one even had to say anything to me, but like, I knew people could see it. I knew people could tell. And of course I missed my exercise as well. But what I cared most about was the fact that I started putting weight on. And that was, I say it was devastating to me at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember it was the summer of you were on cash.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So much.
So many cash shifts because you couldn't walk around, which is like so hard when you work in retail, right? So you can just sit at a till all day. And I remember like having conversations with you, just feeling like really self-conscious and really, I guess, like uncomfortable, which I think is also like, this is kind of one of the other things that makes, these topics complicated, because it is important, I think, for us to feel good in our body. But I do think like if we're going to make changes to our diet and lifestyle in terms of wanting to like change or shift or shrink our bodies, it just has to come from a healthy intention, like you said. And so I'm curious, like what kind of happened after that? So your foot's injured, you can't move, you're putting on weight, you're feeling uncomfortable. Like what kind of came next in your journey? Hey everyone, we're taking a quick break from the podcast to talk about Muse. Muse tracks your brain during meditation to give you real-time feedback on your meditation, guiding you into the zone and solving the major problem that most of us have when starting a meditation practice. Muse lets you know when you're doing it right. Your Muse headband basically acts like your personal assistant. While you meditate, Muse measures whether your mind is calm or active and translates that data into sounds. When you're calm, you'll hear peaceful sounds, and when your mind wanders, the sounds will intensify, guiding you back to a calm state. So if you're like me, where you have a really solid meditation practice and you love to do it every day or every couple of days, but sometimes you just find that you really can't get in the rhythm because your mind is so busy, Muse might be for you. The best part about this is that I have a 15% discount off just for listeners of Matcha Mornings. So head on over to bit.ly/Matcha Mornings Muse to get your discount. All right, back to the episode.
I continue to try to play with diet. Like I just fallen down this rabbit hole. You probably remember this of like high carb veganism.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, a new diet. I love diets. I'm good at diets. I can follow diets. And I was like, maybe this is the secret. Because I slowly was able to introduce some movement back once my foot finally stopped hurting. But there was quite a bit of immobility, I would say, or just no mobility for 2 or 3 months. And I went back to like a bike at the gym and like, you know, doing some weights at the gym and stuff. Like I could go 5 hours without my foot hurting, where it still sucked at Lululemon. So I remember like I was still told to stay off my feet, and I did the cash thing for like a month, I think. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go insane. And so I took myself off cash, and I used to like take painkillers because our shifts were 8 hours, as you remember, sometimes 9 hours, I think. And I would just fight through it. And then, but yeah, I never went back to running the same way. I was super obsessed with food. And from there was like a year and a half of just like being really unhappy. I'd lost this identity of being this super fit girl, and I was desperate to get it back for a long time. And I, believed that it affected other parts of my life. I just made being fit who I was, and being skinny a part of my identity. And when it was gone, it was continually trying to get it back and trying to find ways to have happiness and worth without it for a long time after that.
Right. And so you did the high carb. It was like a high carb, low fat diet, right?
Yeah. There were certain like YouTube celebrities, and I would just like watch videos and videos and videos. I'd be like, okay, like this is right. This is like, this is the truth. Not that it doesn't work for some people, but it really didn't work for me. I found it really, really hard to keep my fat low. And so, yeah, like I ate vegan for years after that. And again, like, it's not like I completely blew. I guess I kind of did compared to how small I was, but like I was just like a normal sized person, but I wasn't okay with that.
Right.
And like, just general not being happy. And, and like when I got really small, I was like, I'm going to be some sort of like fitness trainer. Like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, I had all these like fitness related goals, and like I wanted to become, like, I thought I had figured out food. So I wanted to become a nutritionist. And like when my weight came back on, all that changed. I was like, well, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know anything about food. I don't know anything about fitness. Like, I'm not fit anymore. And so I just didn't know who I was, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I started working front desk at a dentist. Like, I'd run my course at Lululemon, and, my unhappiness had a lot to do with that, because Lululemon's kind of like, okay, you're not happy. What are you doing about it? And I didn't want the pressure of that anymore. I was like, well, I'm really not happy. And they weren't happy that I wasn't happy. So it just wasn't a good fit anymore. And I tried to carve out an identity and a happiness otherwise, but it was something that it consumed me for years and years and years, until I started shifting about looking and caring about my overall happiness and wellness. And that's when things in life started to take like a more of a change, but it took years. So like,
Mhm.
I'm trying to think from that winter, it was probably at least a year and a half, maybe even close to 2 years, to like wishing I was thinner, desperately trying to continually eat a stricter, cleaner vegan diet. I went back to working out, but it was never the same after that because I never had the same recipe of things going on in my life. Like I started a desk job because my foot hurt. And, so I wasn't walking everywhere. I was working 10-hour days. So I didn't even have time to work out as much as I did before. So all these things changed. So even though I did not look bad, like I thought I did, but I never could get back to where I was. And I was just really hung up about that for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember like that period being, I guess, like a challenging time. And I'm curious, like, what did you do kind of like internally and with your own sort of like on your side of things to start shifting towards figuring out like how to find happiness, like not related to your size or your weight?
Well, like obviously, Mel, my best friend Mel, like our really
Mm-hmm.
good friend. I don't know what I was upset about that day or like what I was, dwelling on that day, but she could probably just see, talking to me time and time and time again, not being happy, not being happy. I wasn't even really happy. I wasn't even happy in Banff, but I didn't know where. I didn't want to leave, well, because I was like, well, I don't even know where I will be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, have you ever thought about getting help or like talking to someone? And it was the first time in my adult life I considered it. And it had partly to do with, weight and body image and all those things too. But like, I wasn't happy with myself. I wasn't happy where I was career wise. I wasn't, relationship wise. It was all these things and all that unhappiness and, which added to my stress levels. I had an inability to sleep and I would unexplainably put on weight. Like even when I would like try so hard to eat clean, I was just so unhappy and so stressed all the time. I would continue to put on weight. So anyways, started seeing a free counselor. I talked to my doctor. Healthcare in that area of Alberta is so great. I was really quickly able to get a free counselor like through Alberta Health and just actively working on my mental health, like just being happier and talking about things and actively doing things to make myself a happier person made a really overall difference. And I don't think it was until I'm trying to think of when the shift really happened, because around the same time I started seeing a free nutritionist. Oh, because I had developed awful digestive issues. Like I had gotten IBS really bad. I had learned for how stressed and unhappy I was. So I
Mm-hmm.
saw a free nutritionist as well through Alberta Health. And I lost some weight again. I'd gotten pretty, not like super thin, but I was really happy with how I looked. And then the compliments were starting to come back and stuff. But after I did my yoga teacher training and after I continued to get help with my mental health, I just got to a point where I was just like, I can't keep tying these two things together or I'm never going to be happy. I was probably on the age of 28, 29, again, like where my yoga journey got a bit more, I don't want to say intense, but committed or
Serious.
more serious. I did my yoga teacher training when I was 29, and that, you dig a lot pretty deep into like who you are and all that messy stuff and, the shit that you've got going on. If you have stuff, not everyone has stuff. And I started to put weight on again. So I'd lost weight the summer before that working with this nutritionist, and she got me back on the portion control game pretty hard, which is, I don't know, that's subjective if it's healthy or if it's not healthy. And then I started to put weight on, a little bit of weight again. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like if I really want to like, pursue a different career path, do something different with my life, I can't focus on this anymore. I can't do this to myself anymore. And it was just slowly changing how I talk to myself about it, I guess. Like reminding, like you saw my post the other day on Instagram when I saw that photo come up, like I had to remind myself, Rachel, you are no more loved than when you were thin. You were
Right.
no more successful. You were no like Lululemon's a fun job, but it's not like I had like some amazing career because I was skinny. Like I sold yoga pants and it was fun,
For
but like
minimum wage.
for minimum wage, and I'd have two jobs because I was so like I didn't make enough money to live in Banff, but I felt like, so like, why do you think you're a failure? Like, why do you feel like you're any different? My relationship status, like, was no different. Like, like my friends didn't love me anymore. I just didn't have anything superficial to make me feel confident. Like, I had no true confidence. So I guess
Right.
that's really where it came from. It's like, okay, so how I never thought I'd be someone that would be talking about self-love, like saying the term self-love kind of actually still feels kind of icky, but I was like, I really started to change the way that I talk to myself. And it took a long time to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think it's a good reminder that like these things don't happen overnight. Like just how your journey getting to kind of that like breaking point was a number of years, like the time coming back and shifting your whole mentality is also going to take time. And I think that anytime we attach our self-worth or our identity to something, like whatever it is, it's really hard when that kind of gets taken away from us because all of a sudden we feel like, who am I without this thing? And for you, it sounds like it was like, who am I if I'm not this like, fit, skinny girl who
Yeah.
eats really clean? Like who am I if I'm not that?
Right. And then because I had put so much value on that, and it's not the same, like maybe not the same thing. I don't mean to change gears, but like I've, getting into my 30s and having a committed partner now, I've thought a lot about, I'm like a little bit scared about thinking about having kids because I'm like, I'm not going to be able to practice yoga the same way. So it's like, okay, Rachel, like, start to look at yoga more and more as not just being a physical practice, because I don't want this, like, my addiction again, not my addiction or like my love or my commitment to my physical practice to be so much of who I am,
Mm-hmm.
because I have no idea what that will look like after I have a child, right? Like, again, this
Yeah.
is in the future, but it's something that I think about because I'm like, oh, I'm putting so much work into my physical practice. Like, what if I can't do this stuff anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I can relate to that a lot too. Like the identity of like yoga teacher. And for me, even like traveler is one that I have that I'm
Yep.
like, oh, if I just like go back home, like that means I'm not a traveler. And I think it's like, of course we're going to have these things that we identify as. That's part of, how we talk about ourselves, introduce ourselves. It's part of how we, figure out our businesses and find opportunities for our careers. But I think there's like, kind of like you mentioned before, I think it's always the intention behind it. I think everything can be done with an intention that's positive and with an intention that maybe can lead us to spiral in a negative direction. And I think it's when we get so attached on something that we don't know who we are outside of that is when it becomes more of a challenge or a problem.
Yeah, no, totally. Or just being like, I have a pattern of being like, so like being a yoga teacher means one thing, or being fit means one thing, or like I kind of get it in my head that it's like kind of it's being okay with change. And like, I don't know if anyone's really that good at change. Maybe, because you travel so much and you're constantly moving your surroundings, perhaps you deal with change better. But it's like,
Some types of change, like that type of
yeah,
change, probably.
right. But it's like, okay, I've figured this out. This is what I love. This is who I am. This is what I believe. This is what I think. And then that's just changed so much. And like, and just being like learning to be okay with things changing, what I want to do, or how my body looks, or how I want to eat that week, or for things not to have to be so defined. I felt like they had to be defined for me to understand how things work and to understand myself.
Mm-hmm.
But so like it might seem like a broad stretch to connect the happiness and mental health to what I was eating for some people, but or just how I viewed my body and viewed food. But the less stressed I am about what I'm eating or what I have ate or how my body looks, like the less stress I am in general, it defines how I feel my body, like completely. I feel completely different in my body, and
Mm-hmm.
how my body receives food and nutrients, um and making that shift to just being happier, like or choosing to be happy or to do things in life that make me happy, that's beyond what a physical result is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely like a journey for sure. Do you have any practices when it comes to food specifically eating, like mantras or things that you say before you eat, or any practices like that have really helped you kind of make this shift?
I'm trying to think of tying it to examples. So the first one, like I just mentioned, was it's not only a mantra, or maybe it kind of is, like, I was no more loved, I was no more successful, I'm just as single as I was when I was thin. Like just kind of reminding myself, like, my life didn't change except for how I looked at myself.
Mm-hmm.
Other than being told that I looked great all the time. That was literally the only thing that changed. And I guess, like, maybe like how you feel about this food will impact how it will sit in your body is something that I remind myself of a lot. Like, if you're stressed and feel guilty about eating something, then it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna impact how it sits in your body differently, just because, like, your whole hormonal system reacts differently if you're stressed, or if you think what you're doing is wrong or bad,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of eating. And or like just getting over when I overindulge, like getting past that, like, the Thanksgivings and the Christmases, it's like it doesn't change who I am. Like, so even being a yoga teacher, it's like, okay, I ate too much at Christmas, or like I ate like a bunch of turkey, or I feel really like bloated. It doesn't change the fact that I'm a yoga teacher. Like, that's a big one for me. Like, it doesn't change that I'm still a great yoga teacher, or that, like, I'm a yogi. And that could be, you could change that for anybody, right? Like, I'm still a great mother, or I'm still a great
Mm-hmm.
wife, you know what I mean? Or I'm still a great podcast host if I ate too much yesterday. And it doesn't mean I have to eat too much the next day.
Yeah, I think that is so important, because I think that so many people can relate to this, like, feeling of, I think especially around, like, Christmas just passed a couple months ago and Thanksgiving was before that. It's like there's so many treats around, and it's so nice to enjoy, like, coffee and Bailey's and a shortbread cookie with your family. And there should be no reason why we feel like we can't do that. I understand, like, if you choose not to because it makes you not feel very good, and that's your personal choice, I think that that's fine. But I feel like the mental aspect of when we go to put things in our mouths is something I can relate a ton to. Like, the idea of, like, oh, did I work out today? I shouldn't eat this cookie.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I ate this cookie today, so, like, I can't eat one tomorrow. Like, I feel like that's where it becomes unhealthy and really all consuming, in terms of, like, we're just not letting ourselves, like, enjoy these moments that could be so precious with the people that we love.
Yeah. And in terms of, like, it is, there are those moments. So, like, what I've been working with the last year is, like, how do I enjoy and indulge and not have guilt, but kind of, like, not going overboard, or, like, when I consider overboard. Or maybe just not worrying about it too much. Like, I just don't know if the secret is not worrying about it too much. Because, like, on a day-to-day basis, like, what is healthy eating is so subjective nowadays. Like, I don't think there's literally anything that all diets agree on, other than maybe water is good for you. Like, in terms of, like, grains, or vegan, or paleo, or keto, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no universal, like, maybe lettuce, like water and lettuce.
I was going to say water for sure, because obviously we need that or we die. And I think most are, like, pro vegetable, other than, like, maybe the carnivore diet.
Right. I don't know, but, like, I feel like even, like, keto, it's like you can't eat certain vegetables, or there's, like, you have to be careful of too much vegetables, from what I've heard, because there's too many carbs in it. I've thought about this. Like, what are the universal truths with diet? And, like, literally, like, water and maybe leafy greens are, like, literally the only ones.
Water and kale.
Water and kale are the universal truths of diets. What was I going to say? Like, I feel like I eat well in terms of what I believe is healthy, and I eat what I feel like eating. So, like, sometimes I want meat. Sometimes I'm like, I had meat 2 days in a row. I don't want to have meat for a couple of days. Like, I eat a lot of things I used to eat when I was vegan or paleo, like, hard boiled eggs, and, like, I have chia seed pudding. Like, I just finished eating it before we began our call. And that's the breakfast I used to eat, more or less exactly, when I was, like, 40 pounds thinner and working out all the time. But then, like, on the weekend, so, like, I go to the movies, and I know I'm going to feel like crap if I eat the popcorn with all the fake butter on it, and my boyfriend loves seasoning salt, and I go and I still eat it. And then, so the next day I feel puffy and I'm like, okay. And then like we go out for dinner and then on Saturday, and then on Sunday he wants to order a pizza. And I'm tired. I've had a long day. I just worked a lot and I was trying to get some work done. And so I didn't feel like having to make dinner. And then so I ate the pizza. And then afterwards I was like, oh, Rachel, you ate crap every day this weekend. Like, you didn't need the pizza. Why did you eat the pizza? So like I still have these conversations with myself where like I could have just made some eggs or something Sunday night and I probably would have felt fine about my weekend. So, and I don't know, like and some people would say there was nothing wrong with the fact that I had it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But that's when I saw that photo of myself from 5 years ago in that time of my life where I was super, super small, which you were referencing before. And I see that kind of photo and I forget how small I was. And then I was like, you know what? I choose to not beat myself up about this. I like food. Like, we all have things that we really, really like or want to consume a lot. And in my own like journaling and reflection about food, like if food is your choice of like pleasure or stress reliever, you can't quit food. Like if you're an alcoholic, you can stop drinking. If you are a gambler, you can quit gambling and live. Like, we can't give up our relationship with food. So it's just like you have to have so much grace with it. And I'm constantly playing with it. Like, I have those weekends and then I'm like, oh, I should really eat better because like I'm a yoga teacher, but also I'm a practitioner and I feel better practicing when I eat really clean.
Mm-hmm.
So why do I eat these things? So it's a constant conversation, and like it's definitely not that I don't have it all figured out, but like if I had to continue, I can't imagine where I would be if I was still in that mindset of I have to lose weight to be happy or I have to be a certain size to be happy, because I would not be where I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been really awesome to see your journey. I think it's funny because after living in Canmore full time and working with you, I have been like kind of traveling for a good part of that period, and would just come back every summer and see you. And of course we'd always like get together, make some food together. That's something that you and I have always enjoyed doing, which is really great. But one of the questions has always been like, what are you not eating right now? And I'm certainly not perfect. I mean, I'm gluten-free and I've had, different diet restrictions at points too. So I'm also not just putting that in your corner. But it's, one of the conversations we'd have before we'd go grocery shopping and decide whose house we were going to eat at. And it was really cool to see in your journey this past summer when you were visiting, you're like, I'm pretty much just eating whatever. Like, let's just make what we feel like. And I was like, oh, that's like cool to hear that you've gotten to that point of like, and you can hear it in like the tone of voice and like the way you talk about it, that there is a little bit more ease with it, which I think is, food is nourishment, food is life. Like you said, we can't just stop eating food. It's something that we do need, which makes it the most like complicated relationship essentially, because we do need to nourish ourselves. But then there's also all these things that are designed to make us want more of them. Like, people work in jobs to make things addicting. And then it's hard to just like not eat those things because they taste yummy and they smell good and, blah, blah, blah. But I think ultimately it's like having freedom to make the decisions that you want to make without having this restriction, which can be really, at least I think in my experience and perhaps yours, like just a lot more like easeful and free and light.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just, as you're speaking, it's like everyone is allowed to have their own individual like beliefs or guidelines, or I don't want to say rules, like, because some people, and again, this isn't wrong or bad, are like, you should not have any restrictions ever about anything that you eat. But I don't know if that's a healthy relationship with food either. Kind of depends on what you want. Like, I was thinking over the weekend, I'm like, oh, do I get a bit more? Would I feel better about my, like, in my body and, how I live my day-to-day life? Because it's not just about how I look anymore. It's like, would I sleep better? Would my yoga practice feel better if I maybe try to clean up my diet in these few ways? And like, maybe it's, being careful of not having sugar or having chocolate without too much sugar in it.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I always say, we don't go to the movies that often, but like every time I'm like, I'm not going to have the popcorn. Like, why do I have to have the popcorn when I go to the movies?
Because it smells so good.
It's like, and he puts the ketchup seasoning on it and it's like crack. And like, it's so good. I can just like inhale a whole bag. So is it continuing to get over, like, or just being like, that's not a big deal, move on? like the pizza's not a big deal, move on, which it's not that big of a deal? Or would I have a more harmonious relationship with food if I was able to like kind of put a cap on certain things? So, yeah, it's still something that I'm figuring out, but it just, knowing that it's all okay.
Yeah.
And there's other parts of like your wellness and your health and your happiness than how much you diet. Because like, you meet people that like they kind of can just eat pretty much whatever they want, and that sometimes it's healthy food, and it's some of it's not healthy food, and that they're generally active, but like they're happy and they take care of their well-being, and like they sleep amazing, and like they're doing so much with their life. Like that's what overall health and wellness would mean to me. Like that means way more to me. Like I'd rather sleep soundly, feel mentally sound, and not be thin and not be thinner. Like that's not more important to me now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that also. And I think too, one thing that I've tried to shift in my own like personal health and well-being is thinking about like exercise and movement is something that's more like the long game for me. Like, I go to the gym to strengthen my muscles and my bones and my joints, and I practice yoga for similar reasons, as well as all of the other benefits with breath and mental stuff, so that I can like walk when I'm 80.
Yeah,
It's
like
not
that's
so
the
that I
real
can fit
goal,
into a
right?
certain dress size like tomorrow. It's so that I am still a a functional human when I age, like as I get older, so that I can like run after my kids when they're young, and so that I can like, you know, go on adventures, because I feel like, trying to travel if you have a hip that doesn't function is going to be really challenging as an older person. So that's like
Yeah.
what I've tried to shift.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. Or like I recently went back to the gym. So like my partner, my boyfriend Eric had bought me a gym membership a couple months back, and I would always go through this back and forth of like, well, I'm not practicing yoga enough, so I'm not going to the gym. And but then I'm back at a different gym, which is closer to my house, and it's 24 hours too, which is awesome. And I go a couple times a week, and I go when I feel like it, just to get extra movement. Cause like, yeah, like I'm moving when I'm doing yoga, but like my feet don't necessarily move around that much. Like I go and like walk on a treadmill, like, on incline, or like I've kind of fallen in love with the Stairmaster a bit. Like I just love to sweat and get my heart pumping, and I don't go, and I'm going without any particular goals other than I like to sweat, I like to move,
Mm-hmm.
and I know this is good for me. And like, and then like I don't even really go with a plan per se. I'm just like, what do I feel like doing today? And I really enjoy having that extra movement in my life. And yeah, like, and who knows what it will result in. But like, yeah, I wore, going back to my dinner last weekend, I put on a pair of jeans. It's one of the only pairs of jeans I still have for like any period of time I lived in Banff. And they are a little bit too tight. But the thing is, before I put them on, I felt really great about myself. I was like, yeah, like, I feel strong. Like, I don't feel like super lean, but I don't feel like puffy. Like, no one likes to feel puffy. Doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what your size is. Like,
Yeah.
drinking lots of water. Like I'm eating what I want, and I feel good. And I put those jeans on, and they were a little bit too tight, and it automatically altered how I felt.
Right.
And I was just like, get rid of the jeans, Rachel. Like, just get rid of the jeans. Buy jeans that fit your body now and your lifestyle now. Because if I had put on a pair of jeans that fit me well that day, like I still would have continued thinking that I looked great
Yeah.
or
Right.
felt good about
Right.
myself. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's
We need
like,
to get rid of the skinny jeans.
yeah, just get rid of them. And I did that for years too. Like, not that I think I'm in a position to give like lots of people advice or anything, but like I held on to clothes that didn't fit me for so long. So long. I mean, like one day I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get back to that place of where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And like I mentioned earlier, like that kind of like perfect storm that allowed me to lose so much weight to begin with. Like, I don't know if I'll ever have that again. Like I couldn't, like how my life is set up right now, I could not force myself to put that much time on my feet
Right.
and that much walking unless I went back to a retail job. And
Yeah.
even then I would still have to plan walks in my day to get that much time on my feet on top of working out. So it just like, yeah, I was like, but I thought I held on to it for years. Like I did it before, I could do it again. And like, it's so liberating to get rid of clothes that don't fit you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then last question that I wanted to touch on is, and this is something that I've been trying to shift in my own language and just the way that I talk to people is, what are your thoughts around like the societal, I guess, like commenting on people's weights? And the reason I ask is because, hearing your story, obviously it seems like that kind of was like fuel for your fire a little bit. And who knows, if people had never said anything, who knows like what your journey would have been like. But I have one person I follow on Instagram who I don't know personally, and then another friend who's I'm close with, who have both expressed that, losing weight for them was not good. One was a health thing, one was a grief thing. And, one of them posted quite openly about how, like, so many people commented on how great I looked when I lost a bunch of weight, and it felt awful because I didn't feel good. So I'm curious, like, just your personal thoughts on, commenting on the way that people look, and particularly when they lose weight.
It's definitely something you have to kind of like shift, because our cultural norm is to go, you've lost weight, you look great, congratulations. Like that's the cultural norm, if it's right or if it's wrong. And I mean, I don't know how big the movement towards more body positivity is for other people. Like, it seems like it's big on your feed is what I'm trying to say. Like I follow certain people that, promote body positivity, or, like changing cultural norms about how we talk about like women's bodies. But then if you don't follow those accounts, it doesn't seem like it's a growing trend to you.
Right. Yeah. That's a totally fair point, because I also follow people like that. So I feel like, oh, cool, things are shifting.
So I just try not to value myself or others on how they look.
Right.
So like, instead of being like, oh, you look so skinny, that's so great, like you look great, it's like, what, like you look happy. You see, like, oh, you look so happy, like how's everything going? Like, oh, like you got it, like, like, oh, like what's new, like it's so great to see you, like kind of like have a new opener. Like if you can tell someone's been exercising, like, oh god, oh yeah, your energy's awesome. Like I don't really use that one, that's kind of fake, but like what have you been doing? Like just kind of have a new way of acknowledging someone, because if someone looks great, like if someone's just skinny, like, yeah, you've noticed they've lost weight, like, yeah, there's not necessarily a good connection with that. And like I expressed earlier, like that never made me feel bad. It made me feel really good, because like something I've always done is try to look for acceptance from others. So when I got that, like it was usually very positive feedback about losing weight. It just, what shifted to me to being very negative is when I started putting weight back on and people weren't raving about how good I looked anymore. So it's like, people don't think I look good anymore. I'm not attractive. I'm not as worthy. So like, just be mindful. Like, and I'm guilty about it as everybody else. It's like, okay, I see you this month and I think you've lost weight, so I tell you look good. And then I don't see you for a month or two and you've put 10 pounds on. I notice, I don't tell you that you look good. Like, why is that okay? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like finding, and like even like women in my life, like again, the industry I work in, like there's some women that I think are like, like society standards and my standards are stunning. And I kind of put them on this like pedestal. I'm like, oh my God, she's got like, like she's got a great body. She's so beautiful. But I'm like, focus on other things. Like, that's not fair to just look at her like that way. Like, she's a good person. She's very kind. She's a great yoga teacher. She, like, focus on other things other than the physical. And it is a shift to do that, to like, not judge somebody on either side, but it will change, like, it will reflect about how you think and look at yourself. Like, instead of being like, the first thing is like, oh, okay, how skinny do I look today? It's okay, how did I sleep? Right. Like, do I feel rested? Oh, I didn't get to the gym today. Well, what else did I accomplish? So just taking it, and tell people they look, like, you look good can mean, like, you look happy. Like, you look like you're doing really well. Like, that's when someone says that to me, I feel like it really means something. Like, you're doing well, versus like, oh, you've obviously been restricting your food and working out like a psychopath. That's good. Like,
yeah, absolutely. No, I love those kind of words of advice or words of wisdom and tips for how to shift. And I think that those are just great ways to kind of, just start shifting the conversation slowly around this type of thing. So thank you for sharing that. You mentioned earlier at the beginning of our conversation that you have a yoga business. If people want to learn more about you and your yoga business, where can they go to find you, Rachelle?
The best place would be Instagram. So my business name is Choose Freedom Yoga. So like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of other ways of thinking about freedom that maybe make sense now in terms of like freedom with food or freedom about how you look at yourself, or freedom of your thoughts. So I'm at Choose Freedom Yoga, and it says my name on my profile, Rachelle Shelton. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I do have a website as well that has some older blog posts about my journey with food and a lot of what we talked about at choosefreedomyoga.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It's been so fun getting to chat with you, and just thank you for sharing your story so openly and authentically.
No problem. Thank you for asking me. It was an honor to be asked. You've had a podcast for so many years. And I was like, I wonder if I'll ever be asked to be on a podcast. So it's been really cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Matcha Mornings. To find links mentioned in this episode, show notes, photos, and more, head on over to wanderbarn.com/podcast/matcha-mornings. To be the first to know about brand new episodes of Matcha Mornings, subscribe on your podcast app. If you enjoyed this episode of the show, please leave a review or send me an email at wanderbarn@gmail.com with the subject line Matcha Mornings. To follow along with me, Amanda Kingsmith, you can find me on Instagram at Amanda Kingsmith to learn more about other fun projects I'm working on. To find more great podcasts like this one on topics such as travel, the business of yoga, cryptocurrency, and more, head on over to wanderbarn.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.